So two things before I start this video. Obviously, Pal World is the property of Pocket Pair, and Pokemon is the property of Game Freak and Nintendo. I'm not representing either one of them, and this is just Pal World gameplay and my own Pokemon conspiracy theories. This is, as far as I know, nothing backed up by Nintendo, Game Freak, or anyone. Just my theory. And then number two, this is not scripted at all. Um, just decided to make this video because I've been getting a lot of new subs. Thank you again, by the way. And I decided to maybe try out making some new content. So, I guess let's get started. Basically, the purpose of this video is that I wanted to talk about the common Pokemon conspiracy theory about Ash's heritage and parentage and family tree, and kind of expand upon some of the stuff that I've seen before and add some of my own theories. So, we've all probably, or a lot of us, have heard the theory that Giovanni is Ash's father. And the reason that he never sees his father is that his father is Giovanni. And there's other theories that tie into it that go into Team Rocket, which I kind of maybe agree with to an extent, but also don't. But I'm going to get into that part a little later, just because it ties into some stuff I'm going to go over. But essentially, the theory, if you don't already know it, is basically, of course, as I said, that Giovanni is Ash's father. That's why we never, meet his father, for sure, and it's never confirmed absolutely who his father is. And also one thing to note with this is that I want to say that, like, the TV show and the games I consider to be the same story taking place in slightly different timelines. So Ash and Red, pretty much interchangeable. Gary and Blue, interchangeable. Oak is Oak, obviously. But so you can assume that anything I say being true for Ash, where it applies in the games, is probably true for Red too, by my theory. But anyway, let's get back into it. So, theory starts out that Giovanni is Ash's father. Kind of makes sense. There's some stuff that backs it up. But here's what it almost makes it a lot deeper, but also more believable. Beyond Giovanni being Ash's father, what if Oak is Giovanni's father? We know that one of the big things that caused Team Rocket to even exist in the first place had something to do with the experiments that created Mewtwo. And that was being done by scientists who were researching cloning Mew. So we know that Blaine was one of those scientists, but my theory is that Oak was definitely also one of those scientists. And they had experimented with their cloning technology, at some point created Mewtwo, blown up their base, and at some point Giovanni became involved because he's Oak's son, and he went down a dark path, which eventually caused Oak to have a change of heart and become estranged from his son. So the reason that he's so determined to help Ash and stop Team Rocket is because Ash is actually his grandson, and he wants to help stop his son. And one thing that brings up then is that, well, that would mean that Ash and Gary are related. So are they brothers or are they cousins? How many children does Oak have? So here's where my theory gets even crazier. If you are Oak, who is a scientist who experimented with cloning and was very successful, and you became estranged from your only son, what if, my logical next step, if you're a scientist who wants to pass on your knowledge, is almost like Farnsworth from Futurama. What if Oak cloned himself? And Gary is actually a clone of Oak. This would explain why Oak seems to always favor Ash over Gary, even though, Oak is ostensibly Gary's grandfather, but maybe he's not actually his grandfather. Maybe that's just the cover story that he was told so he wouldn't know he was a clone. Um, Again, based on the rest of the theory, Oak would have the reason and the knowledge to do such a thing, and it would back up just a lot of the story. And now we get into Team Rocket and why Jesse, James, and Meowth are the ones being sent after Ash consistently. Um, Essentially, what I believe is that the reason is not necessarily to make Ash stronger, as most people say. It's that Giovanni is intentionally sending his least competent team because he knows that Ash is his son and doesn't want him to get hurt. So he sends not only his most bumbling team, but also in many situations his most honorable team, who, when the chips are down, actually usually end up rooting for Ash and even helping him. Which would be why Oak is so determined to help this 10-year-old child stop Team Rocket, because he knows that the only person that his son wouldn't just send one of his elite teams to kill is Ash, because Ash is Giovanni's son. This is why the only time we ever see teams like Butch and Cassidy are in situations where Giovanni would not have necessarily expected Ash to be there. And it almost seems as though they're, from that point, being sabotaged every step of the way. Because as soon as Giovanni realizes his son is involved, he doesn't really want them to succeed. So yeah, that's pretty much the gist of my theory. Um, Basically, yeah, Giovanni not only is Ash's father, but Oak is Giovanni's father, and Gary is a clone of Oak. So yeah, please let me know what you think, and I guess if this video goes well, you might see more like it in the future. I apologize for not having a nice edited video together, but again, unscripted, kind of sudden. I know I'm just running around my base in here, just because I wanted to be able to somewhat focus on not sounding like too much of an idiot. But thanks again, and I will see you guys next time. So just a couple other things I wanted to add. Again, it's an unscripted video, so I do apologize. I forgot a couple things. This theory would also explain why Oak is always hanging around Ash's mom. There's a lot of jokes and memes that he's, trying to hook up with her when Ash isn't home. But what if, she's actually just the mother of his grandchild and his son's wife, and he feels, like obligated to protect her because all of the things that happen with Giovanni. And, he might even be worried that Giovanni might come after her because he is, by all accounts, a dangerous criminal. And then the one other thing I wanted to bring up is, as we know, all of the towns in the original Kanto games and in the TV show are named after, colors. And then there's Palette Town. It's suggested that it's all, related to painting. And one of the most famous painters of the Renaissance was named Giovanni Bellini. And if you look at a lot of his early work and some of his most famous paintings, they all really heavily feature trees, either really big in the foreground or even ones that are more barren. There's always at least one tree in the background. So, almost makes you think maybe it's like, oh, Giovanni is a painter who painted a lot of trees. Oak is a tree. All the other scientists are named after trees. Maybe there's some kind of weird link there. Um, but yeah, I just wanted to add those two things just to kind of flesh out the theory. So yeah, thanks again.